Hello and welcome to Cozy Mystery Tales, where every story feels like a conversation over a warm cup of coffee. Today we dive into a classic Sherlock Holmes adventure, narrated from the perspective of Dr. John Watson. Settle in with your favorite brew as we unravel Sherlock Holmes and the truth behind the murder. This intermediate-level mystery is filled with Victorian intrigue, logical deductions, and a touch of suspense. Let's begin. Chapter 1. The Distressed Visitor. It was a bleak autumn evening in the year 1895 when London's fog descended like a spectral veil, cloaking the city in a haze that dulled the clamor of its ceaseless life. The air was thick with the scent of coal smoke and damp earth, and the gas lamps along Baker Street glowed feebly, their light swallowed by the swirling mist. I, Dr. John H. Watson, had just returned to our lodgings at 221B after a fatiguing day tending to patients in the East End. My boots were caked with the mud of Whitechapel's alleys, and my bones ached from the chill that seemed to seep through every layer of clothing. As I entered our sitting room, I found my friend and companion, Sherlock Holmes, seated by the hearth. His lean frame was draped in a dressing gown, and his pipe sent curls of smoke toward the ceiling. His eyes, keen as a hawk's, remained fixed on the fire, as though he were deciphering some cryptic message in its embers. The room was a haven of warmth and familiarity. The cluttered shelves, the chemical apparatus on the deal table, the faint strains of a half-played melody lingering in the air from Holmes's earlier communion with his violin. Yet there was an undercurrent of restlessness in him, a hunger for a puzzle worthy of his intellect. "Watson," he remarked without turning, his voice low and precise, "you have been in the East End today. The mud on your boots speaks of Whitechapel's unpaved lanes, and the faint trace of carbolic on your sleeve suggests a surgical procedure, likely a minor one given your unhurried gait." I chuckled, long accustomed to his uncanny powers of observation. "You are correct as ever, Holmes. A routine operation on a docker's injured hand, nothing more. The man will recover, though his gratitude was as sparse as his purse." I hung my coat and sank into the armchair opposite him, grateful for the fire's warmth. "And you? Have the flames revealed any secrets tonight?" Holmes's lips twitched in a faint smile. "Only that London grows dull without a challenge. The criminal classes have been lamentably uninspired of late." He tapped his pipe against the armrest, a restless gesture. "I require a problem, Watson, a knot to untangle, a shadow to pursue." As if in answer to his wish, a sharp rap echoed from the door below. Mrs. Hudson's voice, muffled but firm, rose through the floorboards, followed by the creak of the staircase under hurried footsteps. Holmes's eyes gleamed and he sat upright, his languor replaced by an almost predatory alertness. "A client," he murmured, "and one in distress if the pace of those steps is any guide." The door opened and Mrs. Hudson ushered in a young lady who could not have been more than 25. She was a striking figure, though her appearance was marred by evident distress. Her face was pale as alabaster, her dark eyes wide with a mixture of fear and grief. She wore mourning black, the silk of her dress rustling softly, and a veil partially obscured her features, lending her an air of mystery. Yet her posture, erect, composed despite her trembling hands, spoke of breeding and resolve. In one gloved hand she clutched a lace handkerchief, its edges crumpled from nervous twisting. "Mr. Sherlock Holmes?" she asked, her voice low but clear, though it wavered with emotion. "I am he," Holmes replied, rising with a courteous nod. "And this is my friend and colleague, Dr. Watson." "Pray be seated, madam. You are in need of assistance, I perceive." The lady hesitated, then sank into the chair Holmes indicated, her veil catching the firelight. "I am Miss Eleanor Hargrove," she began, her words tumbling forth as if long pent up. My father, Sir Reginald Hargrove, has been murdered, and the police are blind to the truth. I have heard of your genius, Mr. Holmes, and I beg you to help me uncover what really happened." Holmes leaned forward, his interest visibly kindled. "Watson, a brandy for our guest, if you would be so kind." "Miss Hargrove, you are safe here. Tell us everything from the beginning, omitting no detail, however trivial it may seem." I poured a measure of brandy from the decanter and pressed the glass into Miss Hargrove's trembling hands. She took a sip, her composure steadying, and began her tale. "My father was a merchant of silks and spices, a man of wealth and influence," she said. "Our home in Kensington was his sanctuary. 2 nights ago he was found dead in his study, stabbed through the heart with his own letter opener. The room was in disarray, papers scattered, a window forced open. The police believe it was a burglary for a priceless family heirloom, a necklace of emeralds passed down for generations, was missing. But I cannot accept their conclusion." Holmes's eyes narrowed. "And why not, Miss Hargrove?" She leaned forward, her voice dropping to a fierce whisper. "Father had enemies, Mr. Holmes, men in business who envied his success, rivals who bore grudges. The necklace was valuable, yes, but other items in the study, gold cufflinks, a silver cigarette case, were untouched. Why would a thief take only one thing? And the servants heard no intruder, no sound of struggle, though the house was quiet that night. I believe someone within our circle, someone father trusted, betrayed him." Holmes steepled his fingers, his expression inscrutable. "Describe the scene as you saw it, if you please." Miss Hargrove's hands tightened on her handkerchief. "I was not at home when it happened. I had been visiting my aunt in Chelsea. I returned late, near midnight, and found the house in chaos. The butler, Mr. Jenkins, had discovered father's body and summoned the police. I rushed to the study, and oh, it was dreadful. Father lay on the carpet, his face frozen in shock, blood staining his waistcoat. The desk was overturned, books strewn about as if a storm had passed through. The window was ajar, its latch broken, and the fog seemed to creep into the room, chilling my very soul." "And the police?" Holmes prompted. "They were thorough, I suppose," she said bitterly. "Inspector Lestrade of Scotland Yard questioned everyone. He noted the footprints in the garden mud outside the window, the missing necklace, and concluded a thief had entered, killed father when discovered, and fled. But Lestrade dismissed my concerns about father's rivals. He said there was no evidence of a personal motive, only theft." Holmes's gaze flicked to me, a spark of excitement in his eyes. "Footprints, you say? Were they clear? Leading to or from the window?" Miss Hargrove frowned, recalling. I believe they led away toward the garden gate, but the fog and rain made them indistinct. The police seemed certain they were fresh." "Rain," Holmes murmured, almost to himself. "And the letter opener, describe it." "It was silver with an ornate handle, a gift from a client in Bombay. Father kept it on his desk, always polished. The police found it beside him, still red with his blood." Holmes nodded, his mind clearly racing. "One final question, Miss Hargrove. Did your father mention any recent disputes, any threats, however vague?" She hesitated, her eyes darting to the fire. "He was troubled these past weeks. He spoke of a disagreement with his business partner, Mr. Blackwell, over accounts. And there was a rival, Mr. Thorne, who lost a valuable contract to father last month. Father laughed it off, but I saw worry in his eyes. He burned letters in the study fire as if hiding something." Holmes rose, his movements brisk. "You have done well to come to me, Miss Hargrove. Watson, we shall visit Hargrove House at first light. The fog may obscure much, but it cannot hide the truth from those who seek it. Miss Hargrove, return home and speak of this to no one. We shall call upon you tomorrow." She stood, relief softening her features. Thank you, Mr. Holmes, Dr. Watson. I knew you would understand. With a final nod, she drew her veil across her face and departed, her footsteps fading into the night. As the door closed, Holmes turned to me, his face alight with purpose. What say you, Watson? A murder disguised as burglary, a missing heirloom, and a family with secrets. The game is afoot. I smiled, warmed by his enthusiasm despite the grim nature of the case. It seems a tangled web, Holmes, but if anyone can unravel it, it is you. He clapped me on the shoulder. To bed, old friend. Tomorrow we hunt for truth amid the shadows of Kensington. Chapter 2. The scene of the crime. The morning following Miss Eleanor Hargrove's visit dawned cold and dreary with a pea-soup fog that clung to London like a jealous lover, muffling the clatter of hooves and the cries of newsboys. Our hansom cab wove through the spectral streets, the clip-clop of the horses' hooves a steady rhythm against the city's muted pulse. Sherlock Holmes sat beside me, his sharp profile half hidden by his scarf, his eyes alight with the thrill of the chase. I, Dr. John Watson, felt a familiar stir of anticipation, tempered by the grim purpose of our journey. To uncover the truth behind Sir Reginald Hargrove's murder. We arrived at Hargrove House, a stately mansion of red brick and ivy, its windows dark save for a faint glow from within. The air smelled of damp leaves and coal smoke, and the garden gate creaked as we approached. Miss Hargrove met us at the door, her face pale but composed, her morning dress stark against the polished oak of the entry hall. "Mr. Holmes, Dr. Watson," she said, her voice steady despite the shadows beneath her eyes. "Thank you for coming. The study is this way." She led us through a corridor lined with portraits, their stern faces seeming to watch our passage, and into the study where her father had met his end. The room was a tableau of chaos frozen in time, bookshelves tilted, their contents spilled across the floor. A mahogany desk upended, its drawers gaping, papers scattered like fallen leaves. A chalk outline on the Persian carpet marked where Sir Reginald had fallen, the bloodstains now a dark, rust-colored smear. A silver letter opener, its ornate handle gleaming, lay nearby, its blade dulled by dried blood. The window stood ajar, its latch visibly scratched, admitting tendrils of fog that curled into the room like ghostly fingers. Holmes wasted no time. Dropping to his knees, he produced his magnifying glass and began a meticulous examination, his movements precise as a surgeon's. "See here, Watson," he called, pointing to a smudge of mud on the floor near the window. "Footprints, leading from the garden. But observe, the mud is dry, though it rained heavily the night of the murder. Curious, is it not?" I peered at the faint tracks, their edges crumbling. "Could they have dried since?" I ventured. Holmes shook his head. "Not in this damp air, and not so quickly, and here—" He gestured to the window latch. "Scratches, yes, but made from inside, not out. The window was forced. But by whom?" His eyes gleamed as he crawled along the floor, pausing to inspect a splintered chair leg, then the desk's scattered contents. I surveyed the room, noting the grandfather clock in the corner, its hands stopped at 11:15. "Miss Hargrove," I asked, turning to her, "you said your father retired early that night. Could he have been working late?" She frowned, clutching her shawl. "He was abed by 10 or so, the servants thought. The clock, it must have been stopped during the struggle." Holmes rose, brushing dust from his trousers, or deliberately to mislead us. He lifted the letter opener with a handkerchief, examining it closely. Clean save for the blood, no smudged fingerprints which a panicked thief might leave, and this— He knelt again, retrieving a torn scrap of paper from beneath the desk. It bore a single word, scrawled in haste: "Betray." The ink was fresh, the handwriting angular, possibly Sir Reginald's own. A dying message? I suggested, my pulse quickening. Or a plant, Holmes murmured, pocketing the scrap. He turned to the window, studying the garden beyond, where indistinct footprints faded into the fog. The police noted these tracks, Miss Hargrove? Yes, she replied. Inspector Lestrade said they led to the garden gate, where the thief likely escaped. But the fog and rain blurred them. Holmes's lips twitched in a faint smile. Lestrade sees what is shown. We shall see what is hidden. He crossed to the bookshelves, running a finger along the spines, then paused at a volume slightly askew, a ledger, its pages marked with hurried notations. Your father kept his accounts here? Some, Miss Hargrove said. He was meticulous but secretive. Mr. Blackwell, his partner, handled most of the firm's books. Holmes nodded, tucking the ledger under his arm. We shall return to Baker Street and consider these findings. Miss Hargrove, ensure this room remains untouched. Watson, we have work ahead. As we stepped into the garden, the fog thickened, swallowing the mansion's outline. The muddy path yielded little, a few broken twigs, a scuff mark near the gate. But Holmes's silence spoke of a mind already piecing together the puzzle. Our cab rattled back through London's shrouded streets, the city waking around us, costermongers' cries, the jangle of harnesses, the distant toll of church bells. Back at 221B, Holmes spread the ledger and scrap on the table, his pipe sending curls of smoke ceilingward. A staged burglary, Watson, he said at last. The footprints, the window, the missing necklace, all too convenient. But this word, betray, it points to a deeper motive. We must probe the shadows of Sir Reginald's life, his partner, his rivals, his household. I nodded, the weight of the case settling upon me. A dark business, Holmes. But if the truth lies hidden, you will find it. He smiled, a glint of steel in his eyes. Indeed, Watson. The game grows intriguing. Chapter 3. Shadows in the Household. The investigation into Sir Reginald Hargrove's murder had drawn us deeper into the labyrinth of his life, and after our examination of the chaotic study, Sherlock Holmes deemed it essential to question the household staff. The fog of that November morning in 1895 still clung to London, wrapping Hargrove House in a spectral shroud as we descended to the servants' quarters. The grandeur of the upper floors gave way to stark simplicity. Bare walls, a flagged floor, and a single window admitting a sickly light. Yet the air was thick with unspoken tensions, as if the very stones held secrets. Miss Eleanor Hargrove had withdrawn to the drawing-room, leaving us to our inquiries. Holmes, his keen eyes scanning every detail, stood before the butler, Mr. Alfred Jenkins, a man of some 50 years with a stern mustache and rigid posture. His black coat immaculate save for a missing button on the cuff, a detail I noted but thought trivial. Beside him stood Annie, the young housemaid, no more than 18, her apron twisted in nervous fingers, her freckled face pale under her cap. Mr. Jenkins, Holmes began, his tone deceptively mild, you discovered Sir Reginald's body. Recount the events of that night precisely. Jenkins cleared his throat, his voice steady but his eyes darting. It was near midnight, sir. I was making my rounds, checking the locks as is my habit. I heard a thud from the study, a heavy sound like a chair falling. I hastened there and found the master dead, stabbed, the room in disarray. I raised the alarm and sent for the police. Holmes's gaze sharpened. A thud, you say? No cry, no footsteps? None, sir, Jenkins replied, though a faint tremor crossed his lips. The house was silent save for that noise. And your whereabouts earlier that evening? Holmes pressed, pacing slowly, his hands clasped behind his back. Jenkins stiffened. In the pantry, sir, inventorying the silver. I was alone. Holmes nodded, his expression inscrutable, and turned to Annie. And you, Miss Annie, what did you hear or see? The maid's eyes widened, her voice a whisper. "I was in the kitchen, sir, polishing cutlery. I heard footsteps in the hall, light ones, maybe at 10:30. I thought it was the master going to his study. I didn't look. 'Twasn't my place." Holmes paused, his magnifying glass appearing as if by magic. He knelt, examining the floor near Jenkins' boots, then rose with a faint smile. "Interesting. Footsteps, but no cry. A silent murder, yet a ransacked room." He fixed Jenkins with a piercing look. "You mentioned to the police a former gardener, dismissed for theft. Tell me of him." Jenkins's jaw tightened. "Thomas Rudd, sir. A surly fellow caught stealing apples from the orchard last spring. Sir Reginald sacked him, and Rudd swore he'd have his revenge. He's been seen loitering near the garden gate since." "A convenient suspect," Holmes murmured, his tone laced with skepticism. "And yet, no one heard an intruder breach the house," I interjected, sensing a thread to tug. "Mr. Jenkins, you've served Sir Reginald long?" 20 years, sir," Jenkins replied, pride mingling with unease. "I was loyal to him, as was my duty." Holmes's eyes flicked to the butler's coat, lingering on the missing button. "Loyalty is a fine quality," he said softly, "but it can blind as well as bind." He turned to Annie. "Miss Annie, did Sir Reginald seem troubled of late? Any visitors? Any arguments?" Annie hesitated, glancing at Jenkins, then spoke. "He was short-tempered, sir, more than usual. A gentleman called last week, Mr. Blackwell, the master's partner. They shouted behind closed doors something about money. And the master burned papers in the study fire late at night." Holmes's lips curved faintly. "Most illuminating. Watson, note the burning of papers, secrets reduced to ash. Mr. Jenkins, Annie, you may return to your duties. We shall speak again." As the servants departed, Jenkins's measured steps contrasting with Annie's hurried ones, I turned to Holmes. "A disgruntled gardener, a missing button, burned papers. Do these point to the killer?" Holmes chuckled, leading me back to the hall. "They point to a puzzle, Watson. The gardener is a red herring, too obvious for a crime so carefully staged. Jenkins's tale is rehearsed, and that missing button. Curious indeed. As for Annie, her footsteps may hold a key or a distraction." We paused in the corridor, the portraits of Hargrove ancestors gazing down, their painted eyes cold. The house felt alive with whispers, each creak of the floorboards a confession waiting to be heard. Holmes's mind, I knew, was already sifting the fragments. The dry mud, the scratched latch, the word betray scrawled on that scrap of paper. "The household hides more than it reveals," he said, his voice low. "We must probe deeper, into Sir Reginald's business, his enemies, his secrets." As we prepared to depart, Miss Hargrove appeared, her face drawn. "Have you found anything, Mr. Holmes?" "Clues, Miss Hargrove," Holmes replied, his tone reassuring yet cryptic. "The truth is a shy creature, but we shall coax it into the light. Expect us tomorrow." We stepped into the fog, the mansion fading behind us like a dream. The cab ride back to Baker Street was silent. Holmes lost in thought, his fingers drumming a restless rhythm. London moved around us, costermongers hawking wares, the jangle of harnesses, the toll of a distant bell. But the case had woven its spell, drawing us into its shadowed heart. Chapter 4. The Business of Betrayal. The investigation into Sir Reginald Hargrove's murder had cast a net over his household, and now, on that fog-draped morning of November 1895, Sherlock Holmes and I ventured into the heart of London's commercial district to probe the late merchant's business dealings. The city was a hive of activity, its streets thronged with clerks and bowlers, costermongers hawking hot chestnuts, and the ceaseless clatter of hooves on cobblestones. The fog, though thinning, still veiled the spires and chimneys, lending an air of secrecy to our mission. Holmes, his eyes alight with purpose, led the way to the offices of Hargrove and Blackwell, importers of silks and spices, where we hope to uncover motives hidden in ledgers and rivalries. We ascended a marble staircase to a heavy oak door bearing the firm's name in gilded letters. The office within was a study in prosperity. Polished wood gleamed under gaslight, shelves sagged with account books, and a portrait of Sir Reginald gazed sternly from above the mantel. Mr. Elias Blackwell, Sir Reginald's partner, rose to greet us, his round face flushed and his waistcoat strained across an ample midriff. His handshake was damp, his smile forced, and a sheen of perspiration glistened on his brow despite the fire's warmth. "Mr. Holmes, Dr. Watson," he said, his voice hearty but brittle. "A tragic loss, Sir Reginald's death. How may I assist you?" Holmes settled into a leather chair, his gaze fixed on Blackwell like a hawk eyeing its prey. "We seek the truth behind your partner's murder, Mr. Blackwell. You were close to Sir Reginald, I presume?" "Indeed," Blackwell replied, sinking heavily into his seat. 20 years we built this firm from a single warehouse to an empire. His loss is devastating." His fingers toyed with a gold watch chain, betraying unease. Holmes leaned forward, his tone deceptively mild. "Yet you argued with him days before his death over financial matters. Care to elaborate?" Blackwell's eyes darted and he dabbed his forehead with a handkerchief. "A minor disagreement, Mr. Holmes, as partners often have. A question of allocations, nothing more. We resolved it amicably." "Resolved?" Holmes's voice was sharp now. "Miss Hargrove mentioned heated words and Sir Reginald burned papers in his study. Secrets, perhaps, or discrepancies in the accounts." Blackwell flinched, his jowls quivering. "I assure you, sir, our books are in order. Sir Reginald was meticulous, as was I. If he burned papers, it was likely personal correspondence, not business." Holmes's lips twitched in a faint, skeptical smile. "Then you won't object to our examining the ledgers?" It was not a question. He rose, moving to the desk where a thick account book lay open, its pages dense with figures. I joined him, noting the neat rows of entries, though my untrained eye could discern little beyond dates and sums. Holmes, however, pored over the pages with the intensity of a scholar deciphering an ancient text. "Here," he murmured, pointing to a series of transactions dated the previous month. "Payments to a supplier in Calcutta, yet the amounts exceed the recorded shipments. And these withdrawals marked only as miscellaneous. Most irregular." Blackwell's face reddened. "Mere clerical errors, I'm sure. Sir Reginald handled those accounts himself." "Curious," Holmes said, closing the ledger with a snap. "For a meticulous man to err so consistently suggests either incompetence or intent. Which was it, Mr. Blackwell?" The merchant bristled, his voice rising. "I resent the implication, sir. I had no cause to harm Reginald. His death hurts our firm. Orders are delayed, clients nervous. Why, only last week Victor Thorne, that scoundrel of a rival, tried to poach our contracts." Holmes's eyes gleamed at the mention of Thorne, the rival Miss Hargrove had named. "Thorne, you say? He bore a grudge against Sir Reginald?" "Grudge?" Blackwell snorted. "Thorne lost a fortune when Reginald outbid him for a spice contract last spring. He's a bitter man, with a temper to match. If anyone wished Reginald ill, it was he," I interjected, sensing a thread. "Did Thorne ever threaten Sir Reginald directly?" Blackwell hesitated, then nodded. "A month ago at the exchange he shouted that Reginald would regret crossing him. Half the merchants heard it." Holmes nodded, pocketing a folded page he'd discreetly torn from the ledger. A bold move, but typical of his disregard for convention in pursuit of truth. "We shall speak with Mr. Thorne. Mr. Blackwell, ensure these ledgers remain untouched. We may return." As we descended to the street, the fog had lifted slightly, revealing the city's ceaseless pulse. The jangle of harnesses, the cry of a newsboy hawking the Times, the distant chime of St. Paul's. Holmes was silent, his mind clearly racing. "Embezzlement, Watson," he said at last as our cab rattled toward Baker Street. "The ledger points to missing funds, and Blackwell's nerves betray guilt or fear. Yet Thorne's rivalry offers another motive. The word betray grows ever more significant." I frowned, the pieces of the puzzle elusive. Could Blackwell have killed Sir Reginald to cover theft? Or Thorne in revenge? Holmes chuckled, lighting his pipe. "Both are plausible, yet the staged burglary, the dry mud, the scratched latch, suggests a mind more subtle than either man seems. We must tread carefully, Watson, lest we chase shadows while the true culprit slips away." Chapter 5. A Threatening Shadow. The investigation into Sir Reginald Hargrove's murder had woven a complex tapestry of clues and suspicions, and by the late afternoon of that fog-bound November day in 1895, Sherlock Holmes and I had returned to the sanctuary of 221B Baker Street. The fire crackled cheerfully, casting shadows across the familiar clutter. The violin resting on its stand, the chemical apparatus glinting on the deal table, the air faintly scented with tobacco and reagents. Yet the warmth of our lodgings could not dispel the chill of the case, which grew ever more intricate with each revelation. Holmes, his sleeves rolled up, was engrossed at his chemistry table, analyzing the torn scrap of paper bearing the word betray. While I sat by the hearth, my thoughts tangled in the web of motives and misdirection. "Watson," Holmes remarked without looking up, his voice sharp with focus, "the ink on this scrap is fresh, no more than a week old, and its composition matches that used in Hargrove's study. The handwriting, too, bears the angular flourish of Sir Reginald's pen. A dying message, perhaps, or a deliberate plant to mislead." I set aside my journal, intrigued. If Sir Reginald wrote it, could it name his killer? Blackwell, perhaps, given the ledger's discrepancies. Holmes's lips twitched in a faint smile as he adjusted his microscope. Possible, but premature. The word betray suggests a personal wound, business, family, or loyalty. We must consider all players: Blackwell's nervous sweat, Thorne's vengeful temper, Jenkins's rehearsed tale. He paused, adding a drop of reagent to a test tube which hissed softly. "The dry mud and staged window still trouble me. This is no common crime." Before I could reply, a sharp knock at the door broke the silence. Mrs. Hudson entered, her face creased with concern, and handed Holmes an envelope. "Delivered by a street lad, sir." No sender's name, and the boy was off before I could ask. Holmes slit the envelope with a paper knife, his eyes narrowing as he read the single sheet within. He passed it to me, his expression unreadable. In bold, slanting script it read, "Hargrove deserved his fate. Thorne." The paper was coarse, the ink smudged, as if written in haste. "A taunt," I said, my pulse quickening. "Thorne openly confessing? Or someone wishing us to think so?" Holmes replied, examining the envelope under his magnifying glass. "No postmark, delivered by hand. The ink is cheap, the paper common, untraceable, save for intent. This is meant to divert us, Watson, to fix our gaze on Thorne while the true culprit skulks in shadow." I frowned, the case's layers deepening. But Thorne's motive is clear. His lost contract, his public threat. Could he have staged the burglary to mask a personal vendetta? Holmes returned to his table, setting the letter aside. "Thorne is a possibility, but the crime's precision, the stopped clock, the clean letter opener, suggests a mind more disciplined than his bluster implies. We shall visit him tomorrow, but first—" He gestured to the ledger from Blackwell's office, open beside him. "These accounts confirm funds siphoned over months, small enough to escape notice, yet totaling a fortune. Blackwell's hand, or Hargrove's, or another's using the firm as a veil? I rose, peering over his shoulder at the ledger's dense columns. Embezzlement as motive for murder? Blackwell stood to lose if Hargrove uncovered the theft. Indeed, Holmes said, his voice low. But consider Jenkins, the loyal butler with a missing button, or even Miss Hargrove, grieving yet sharp-eyed. Loyalty can mask ambition, grief can cloak guile. He leaned back, lighting his pipe, the smoke curling like the fog outside. The word betray haunts me, Watson. It speaks of trust shattered, a wound deeper than business. The room fell silent save for the fire's crackle and the distant clatter of a passing cab. I felt the weight of the case pressing upon us, each clue a thread in a knot we had yet to untangle. Holmes's mind, I knew, was racing, sifting possibilities with the precision of his chemical scales. The anonymous letter, the ledger's secrets, the staged crime scene, all pointed to a truth buried beneath layers of deception. Holmes, I ventured, what of the necklace? The police believe it the thief's prize, yet Miss Hargrove said other valuables were untouched. He nodded, his eyes gleaming. The necklace is a distraction, Watson, or a symbol. Its theft was deliberate, meant to paint the crime as robbery. But why that heirloom? A family secret, perhaps, or a taunt to those left behind. He rose, pacing, his shadow sharp against the wall. Tomorrow we pursue Thorne, probe his alibi, and revisit the household. The truth lies in the details, the mud, the clock, the button. As he spoke, the fog pressed thicker against the windows, London's pulse a faint murmur. I felt a thrill of anticipation tempered by unease. The case was no mere puzzle, but a shadow play of human passions, greed, vengeance, betrayal. Holmes, I knew, would pierce the veil, but at what cost to those entangled? Chapter 6. The Rival's Alibi. The trail of Sir Reginald Hargrove's murder had led us from the refined halls of Kensington to the pulsing heart of London's commerce, and on that chill, fog-shrouded morning of November 1895, Sherlock Holmes and I sought out Victor Thorne, the rival merchant whose name had surfaced in whispers of vengeance. The Thames lay before us, its waters sluggish under a pall of mist, the docks alive with the creak of ropes and the shouts of stevedores. Thorne's warehouse, a squat fortress of brick and iron, stood at the river's edge, its windows dark as if guarding secrets. Holmes, his eyes keen with anticipation, led the way, undeterred by the damp that seeped through our coats or the case's growing complexity. We navigated a maze of crates, sacks of saffron, bolts of indigo silk, before reaching a narrow stair to Thorne's office. The air grew heavy with the scent of spices and mildew, and the distant lap of the river underscored our steps. Inside, the office was a stark contrast to Blackwell's opulent quarters. A scarred desk, a single gas lamp casting harsh shadows, and walls lined with ledgers and nautical charts. Victor Thorne rose to meet us, a bear of a man with a jagged scar across his cheek, his eyes hard as flint. His coarse waistcoat and rolled sleeves spoke of a man more at home on the docks than in drawing rooms, yet his presence carried a raw authority. "Mr. Sherlock Holmes," he growled, his voice rough as gravel. "I've heard of you, and you, Dr. Watson. What brings you to my door? I've no time for idle talk." Holmes, unperturbed, settled into a creaking chair, his gaze fixed on Thorne. "We investigate the murder of Sir Reginald Hargrove. Your name, Mr. Thorne, has been mentioned, quite prominently." Thorne's laugh was a harsh bark. "Hargrove, that snake got what was coming to him, but I didn't kill him. You've got the wrong man, Holmes." "Then you won't mind clarifying your whereabouts the night of the murder," Holmes said, his tone deceptively mild. "2 nights ago, between 10 and midnight." Thorne leaned back, crossing thick arms. "I was at the Lyceum Theater watching The Merchant of Venice. Got the ticket stub to prove it, and 6 merchants saw me in the foyer. Ask 'em." Holmes's eyes narrowed. "A convenient alibi," And this? He produced the anonymous letter from his pocket, its bold script glaring. Hargrove deserved his fate. Thorn. Care to explain? Thorn's face darkened as he scanned the note, his scar twitching. This ain't my hand. Someone's playing you, Holmes, trying to pin it on me. I hated Hargrove, sure, he stole a spice contract that cost me thousands, but I'm no fool. Murder's a messy way to settle scores. I interjected, sensing an opening. You threatened him publicly, Mr. Thorn, at the exchange. Witnesses heard you vow he'd regret crossing you. Thorn's fists clenched, but his voice remained steady. Words, Doctor, not daggers. Hargrove outbid me, played dirty with suppliers. I shouted my piece, but I didn't sneak into his house and stab him. You want a killer? Look at Blackwell, his partner. Word is their firm was bleeding money. Holmes's lips twitched in a faint smile, as if Thorn's deflection amused him. He rose, circling the office, his magnifying glass appearing as he examined the floor. Curious, he murmured, pausing by Thorn's boots caked with dried mud. This mud resembles that found in Hargrove's study, coarse with traces of river silt. From these docks, perhaps? Thorn snorted. Half of London's boots carry river mud, Holmes. You'll find that same dirt in every garden from here to Kensington. Perhaps, Holmes said, his tone noncommittal. He pocketed the glass and turned back to Thorn. Your alibi will be verified, Mr. Thorn. If you've lied, I shall know it. And if this letter is a forgery, as you claim, it points to a mind eager to cast suspicion your way. Thorn leaned forward, his eyes blazing. Find the bastard who wrote it, then. I've got enough enemies without being framed for murder. We took our leave, descending to the docks where the fog swirled thicker, the river a shadowed murmur. Holmes was silent, his mind clearly sifting Thorn's words against the case's mosaic. The staged burglary, the dry mud, the word betray. As our cab rattled back toward Baker Street, I ventured, Thorn's alibi seems solid, Holmes, but that mud. Could he have been at Hargrove's house? Holmes lit his pipe, the match flaring in the cab's dim interior. The mud is suggestive, Watson, but not conclusive. Thorn is right, it's common enough. His alibi, if it holds, complicates matters. The letter, however, is a misdirection meant to inflame our suspicions. Someone wishes us to chase Thorn while they slip through the net. I frowned, the case's threads tangling further. Blackwell, then? His ledger irregularities point to motive. Or Jenkins, Holmes mused, whose loyalty may mask deeper grievances, or another yet unseen. The truth, Watson, lies in the interplay of these clues. The stopped clock, the clean letter opener, the missing necklace. His eyes gleamed. We are close, but the shadow remains. Chapter 7. The Telltale Clue. The investigation into Sir Reginald Hargrove's murder had drawn us through a maze of motives and misdirection, and by the evening of that fog-enshrouded November day in 1895, Sherlock Holmes and I had retreated to 221B Baker Street to sift the clues gathered thus far. The fire crackled in the grate, its warmth a bulwark against the chill seeping through the windows, where London's fog pressed like a silent conspirator. The room was a familiar haven, books piled haphazardly, the violin resting on its stand, the air faintly sharp with chemical fumes, yet it hummed with the tension of a case nearing its crux. Holmes, his lean frame taut with purpose, stood by the mantel, his magnifying glass trained on a small object, his eyes alight with the thrill of discovery. Watson, he said, his voice low and vibrant, come here. This may be the thread that unravels our mystery. I rose, joining him by the fire. In his hand was a coat button, its brass surface dulled but intact, threaded with a snippet of black cloth. From the study, I asked, recalling the disarray of Hargrove's murder scene. Precisely, Holmes replied, holding it to the light. Found near the desk, overlooked by Lestrade's men. Observe the thread, freshly cut, not frayed, and the button itself matches the set on Jenkins's coat, save for the one missing from his cuff. I frowned, the butler's stern face flashing to mind. Jenkins? But why would he plant his own button? To incriminate himself? Holmes's lips curved in a wry smile. Not incrimination, Watson, misdirection. The button was placed to suggest a struggle, a clue too obvious to be genuine. Jenkins is no fool. He knows a missing button would be noticed. This was meant to divert us, to make us question his role while the true purpose of the crime remains obscured. He set the button down and crossed to the table, where the torn scrap bearing the word betray lay beside the ledger from Blackwell's office. Consider the constellation of clues, he continued, his voice a steady cadence. The dry mud, despite the rain, the window scratched from within. The clock stopped at 11:15, though Hargrove retired by 10. And now this button, a deliberate plant. The murder was no impulsive act, but a performance staged to mislead. I sat, my mind racing to keep pace. The stopped clock. Could it have been tampered with post-mortem? Holmes nodded, his eyes gleaming. Indeed. I examined it at the scene. The mechanism was forcibly jammed. The hands moved to suggest a later time of death. Whoever killed Hargrove wished to obscure the true hour, perhaps to bolster an alibi or confuse the sequence of events. I leaned forward, the pieces shifting in my mind. Jenkins, then. His story of hearing a thud at midnight could be a lie. But what motive? Loyalty to Hargrove seemed genuine. Loyalty, Holmes mused, lighting his pipe, the match flaring briefly. Or resentment masked as duty. Jenkins served Hargrove for 20 years, a lifetime of deference. Such bonds can fester into hatred, especially if Hargrove wronged him. Yet we must not fixate too soon. Blackwell's ledger shows embezzlement. Thorne's boots carry suggestive mud, and Miss Hargrove herself may hide more than grief. He picked up the anonymous letter. Hargrove deserved his fate, Thorne, and examined it anew. This letter remains a puzzle. Its coarse paper and smudged ink suggest haste, yet its delivery was calculated. If Thorne is innocent, as his alibi suggests, someone seeks to frame him. But who benefits from such a diversion? I shook my head, the case's complexity daunting. The necklace, Holmes, could it be the key? Its theft feels too specific, ignoring other valuables. Holmes exhaled a curl of smoke, his gaze distant. The necklace is no mere prize, Watson. It was taken to tell a story, burglary, greed, chaos. Yet its absence may point to something deeper. A family secret, a vendetta, or a message to those left behind. We must revisit Hargrove House, probe Jenkins further, and verify Thorne's alibi. As he spoke, a gust rattled the window, the fog swirling like a living thing. The room felt smaller, the weight of the case pressing upon us. I glanced at the button, its brass glinting in the firelight, and felt a chill unrelated to the cold. The word betray echoed in my mind, a whisper of broken trust that bound the suspects, Jenkins, Blackwell, Thorne, perhaps even Miss Hargrove, in a web of deceit. Holmes, I said, this case feels personal. The staging, the word betray. It's as if the killer wanted Hargrove's death to resonate beyond the act itself. He nodded, his expression grave. You are not wrong, Watson. This murder is a statement, a reckoning. But the truth lies in the details, and we are close to piercing the veil. He set his pipe down, his hands restless. Tomorrow we return to Kensington. The telltale clue is found. Now we must follow where it leads. Chapter 8. Secrets Unearthed. The investigation into Sir Reginald Hargrove's murder had drawn us ever deeper into a labyrinth of deceit, and on the following morning of that fog-laden November in 1895, Sherlock Holmes and I, found ourselves in a cavernous records office near the Strand, seeking the secrets that might illuminate the killer's motive. The case had grown intricate, its clues, dry mud, a planted button, the word betray, weaving a tapestry of betrayal that pointed to the heart of Hargrove's life. The archive room, with its towering shelves and flickering gaslight, felt like a crypt of forgotten truths, each file a potential key to the puzzle. Holmes, his keen eyes scanning pages with predatory focus, was in his element, while I, Dr. John Watson, stood ready to chronicle the revelations that might finally pierce the fog of this mystery. We had come to verify Thorne's alibi and probe Hargrove's past, armed with the ledger's irregularities and the butler Jenkins's suspicious demeanor. The records office, a warren of bureaucratic relics, held documents on Hargrove's business dealings, family history, and legal affairs. Holmes had secured access through a contact at the Home Office, his influence cutting through red tape with the precision of his scalpel. As we sifted through dusty volumes, the air grew heavy with the scent of mildew, and the distant clatter of London, cab wheels, vendors' cries, faded to a murmur. "Here, Watson," Holmes said, his voice sharp with discovery, pulling a thin file from a shelf. "A will dated 10 years ago, and a series of letters sealed by Hargrove's solicitor." He spread the documents on a scarred table, the gas lamp casting long shadows across the faded ink. I leaned over, deciphering the legal script. The will named Eleanor Hargrove as primary heir to Hargrove's fortune, with provisions for loyal servants, Jenkins among them. But a curious clause caught my eye. "Holmes, look here. A codicil mentions an unnamed beneficiary entitled to a substantial sum provided they remain anonymous. Who could this be?" Holmes's eyes gleamed as he scanned the letters. "A question that may unlock our case. These correspondences—" He paused, unfolding a brittle page. "They reveal a scandal Hargrove buried. Alfred Jenkins, our stern butler, is Hargrove's illegitimate son, born to a housemaid and disowned to protect the family name." I gasped, the pieces shifting in my mind. Jenkins? His loyalty, the missing button, it could mask resentment, even hatred. Could he have killed Hargrove for being cast aside? Holmes nodded, his fingers tracing the letter's lines. "Possible, Watson, but consider this. Another letter from Blackwell hints at blackmail. Hargrove's partner knew of Jenkins's parentage and used it to siphon funds, as the ledger suggests. Hargrove, discovering the theft, may have confronted Blackwell. Or Jenkins if the butler learned of the betrayal." I frowned, the web tightening. Blackwell then had motive to silence Hargrove before exposure. But the staged burglary, the dry mud, the stopped clock, points to careful planning, not a panicked act. "Precisely," Holmes said, closing the file with a snap. Jenkins's button planted to mislead suggests he knew suspicion would fall on him. Yet Blackwell's nervousness and Thorne's convenient letter muddy the waters. We must return to Hargrove House, confront Jenkins with this, and observe his reaction. As we gathered the documents, a clerk shuffled by, his footsteps echoing in the vast room. The gaslight flickered, casting Holmes's shadow sharp against the shelves, and I felt a chill, as if the secrets we'd unearthed carried a weight of their own. Jenkins, a son scorned; Blackwell, a partner turned parasite; Thorne, a rival possibly framed, each thread wove back to the word betray, a wound that pulsed through Hargrove's life. We emerged into the foggy street, the records office looming behind us like a sentinel of hidden truths. Our cab rattled toward Kensington, the city's pulse, jangle of harnesses, toll of church bells, muffled by the mist. Holmes was silent, his mind clearly racing, sifting the new revelations against the case's mosaic, the clean letter opener, the missing necklace, the anonymous letter. "The necklace, Watson," he said at last, his voice low. "Its theft was no afterthought. It ties to the family, perhaps to Jenkins himself. a symbol of the legacy he was denied. I nodded, the case's personal nature sharpening. If Jenkins is the killer, the word betray could be his accusation against Hargrove written in his father's blood. Holmes's lips twitched in a faint smile. Or a cunning misdirection by another hand. Blackwell's greed, Thorne's grudge, even Miss Hargrove's grief all bear scrutiny. The truth is close, Watson, but it hides in the shadows of trust broken. As the cab neared Hargrove House, the fog thickened, swallowing the street lamp's glow. I felt the weight of the case pressing upon us, each clue a step toward a reckoning. Jenkins's secret, unearthed from dusty files, cast him in a new light, but whether as victim or villain remained unclear. Holmes, I knew, would follow the telltale clues, the button, the mud, the word betray, to their source, no matter how dark the path. Chapter 9. The Web Tightens. The investigation into Sir Reginald Hargrove's murder had reached a fevered pitch, and on that tempestuous evening of November 1895, Sherlock Holmes summoned the key figures to Hargrove House's drawing room, determined to tighten the noose around the truth. The fog that had cloaked London for days had given way to a violent storm, its thunderclaps shaking the mansion's ancient walls, its rain a relentless drumbeat against the panes. The room was a haven of opulence, crimson drapes, polished mahogany, the soft hiss of gaslight, but the air crackled with unease, as if the storm outside mirrored the turmoil within. Holmes, his lean frame taut with purpose, stood like a conductor before an orchestra of suspects, while I, Dr. John Watson, watched from the sidelines, my notebook ready to capture the unraveling of this intricate mystery. Miss Eleanor Hargrove sat on a settee, her mourning black stark against the velvet, her eyes red-rimmed but resolute. Alfred Jenkins, the butler, stood rigidly by the door, his stern mustache twitching, the absence of his coat's button glaringly evident. Elias Blackwell, the portly business partner, slumped in an armchair, his handkerchief damp with sweat, his gaze darting nervously. Victor Thorne, the scarred rival, leaned against the mantel, his bulk imposing, his eyes hard with defiance. The room was a crucible, each occupant a thread in the web Holmes had woven from clues. Dry mud, a planted button, a stopped clock, the word betray. "Gentlemen, Miss Hargrove," Holmes began, his voice clear and commanding. "We stand at the precipice of truth. Sir Reginald Hargrove was murdered not by a random thief, but by a hand driven by betrayal. Tonight we shall see that hand revealed." Miss Hargrove's voice trembled. "Mr. Holmes, have you found my father's killer?" Holmes's eyes gleamed. "The clues have spoken, madam. The study's dry mud despite the rain, the window scratched from within. The clock stopped deliberately at 11:15, so all point to a staged crime. And this," he produced the torn scrap with betray scrawled upon it. "A word in Sir Reginald's hand, or a cunning forgery?" Blackwell sputtered, his face crimson. "You can't think I'd stoop to murder. Reginald and I argued, yes, but over trifles. Accounts, nothing more." Holmes turned, his gaze piercing. "Trifles, Mr. Blackwell? Your ledger reveals thousands siphoned, disguised as miscellaneous. You knew of a secret, Jenkins' parentage, and used it to blackmail Sir Reginald, draining his fortune." Jenkins's face paled, his fists clenching. "Lies. I served the master loyally despite his shame upon me." Holmes's voice softened, but his eyes were steel. "Mr. Jenkins, you are Sir Reginald's son, disowned to protect the family name. Did your loyalty curdle into resentment? The button from your coat found in the study was no accident. It was placed to mislead, a clumsy attempt to deflect suspicion." Jenkins's voice cracked. "I loved him even when he cast me aside. I'd not harm him." Thorne's laugh was harsh. "This is a farce, Holmes. You've got nothing on me. I was at the theater with witnesses. That letter—" He jabbed a finger at the anonymous note. Hargrove deserved his fate. Thorn is a forgery, meant to frame me. Holmes nodded, producing the letter. Indeed, Mr. Thorn, it is forged. The ink and paper betray a hasty hand, not yours. Someone wished to divert us, to make you the scapegoat while the true culprit hid. His gaze swept the room, lingering on each face. But the necklace, the emerald heirloom, tells a deeper tale. It was taken not for greed, but to wound, to mark the crime as personal. Miss Hargrove gasped, her hands twisting her handkerchief. The necklace. It was Mother's, a symbol of our family. Why take it? Holmes paced, his shadow sharp against the wall. To obscure the motive, madam, the killer wished us to see a burglary, not a reckoning. But the clues, the clean letter opener, the stopped clock, point to someone within this circle, someone who knew Hargrove's habits, his secrets. Blackwell's voice rose, desperate. If Jenkins is his son, he had cause, or Thorn with his grudge, not me. Thorn snarled, stepping forward. Watch your tongue, Blackwell, or I'll— Enough! Holmes's voice cut through, sharp as a blade. The web tightens, but one thread remains loose. Mr. Jenkins, your midnight discovery of the body, why check the study so late when your rounds ended earlier? Jenkins faltered, his eyes darting. I heard a noise, as I said. Holmes's smile was cold. A lie, sir. The clock was stopped, the scene staged. You know more than you admit. The room fell silent save for the storm's roar. I felt the tension coil, the truth tantalizingly close. Holmes's mind, I knew, had pieced the clues together. The button, the mud, the forged letter. But he held back, letting the suspect's nerves fray. The word betray hung in the air, a specter binding them all. Jenkins's hidden lineage, Blackwell's greed, Thorn's rivalry, even Miss Hargrove's grief. Chapter 10. The Revelation. The investigation into Sir Reginald Hargrove's murder had reached its zenith. And on that stormy evening of November 1895, Sherlock Holmes stood poised to unravel the web of deceit that had ensnared us all. The drawing room of Hargrove House, with its crimson drapes and gleaming mahogany, was a stage for revelation. The storm outside a fitting chorus to the drama within. Thunder rolled, shaking the windows as lightning cast Holmes's sharp features in bold relief. Miss Eleanor Hargrove sat rigid, her mourning black stark against the settee. Alfred Jenkins, the butler, stood by the door, his stern face ashen. Elias Blackwell slumped, sweating in an armchair. Victor Thorne leaned against the mantel, his scarred visage defiant. I, Dr. John Watson, gripped my notebook, my heart pounding as Holmes prepared to name the killer, the clues. Dry mud, planted button, the word betray, converging at last. Gentlemen, Miss Hargrove, Holmes began, his voice a blade cutting through the tension. The truth behind Sir Reginald Hargrove's murder lies before us, woven from the threads of deception. The staged burglary, the missing necklace, the forged letter, all were meant to obscure a crime rooted in betrayal. Tonight I shall reveal the hand that struck the fatal blow. Miss Hargrove's voice trembled. Mr. Holmes, please end this torment. Who killed my father? Holmes's eyes gleamed, his pacing deliberate. Let us retrace the clues. The study's dry mud, despite the rain, suggests no intruder entered from the garden. The window, scratched from within, was forced to mimic a break-in. The clock, stopped at 11:15, was tampered with to falsify the time of death, for Sir Reginald retired by 10. The letter opener, clean save for blood, bore no smudged prints of a panicked thief. And this, he held up the scrap with betray. A word in Sir Reginald's hand, or a forgery pointing to a wound deeper than steel. Blackwell's voice cracked, desperate. It wasn't me. The accounts, yes, I took funds, but murder? Never. Holmes turned, his gaze piercing. Your embezzlement, Mr. Blackwell, gave you motive, but your nerves betray cowardice, not cunning. You blackmailed Sir Reginald with knowledge of Jenkins's parentage, siphoning a fortune, but you lacked the resolve to kill. Jenkins stepped forward, his face contorted. You dare accuse me, Holmes? I was his son, cast aside, yet I served him faithfully. Holmes's voice softened, but his eyes were steel. Mr. Jenkins, your pain is real, but your actions betray you. The button from your coat planted in the study was a clumsy misdirection. You knew suspicion would fall on you, yet you placed it to confuse us. Why? Thorne's laugh was harsh. He's your man, Holmes. That forged letter tried to pin it on me, but Jenkins had the run of the house. Holmes raised a hand, silencing him. Mr. Thorne, your alibi holds. Witnesses confirm your presence at the theater. The letter was indeed a forgery meant to divert us, but the true killer is here, and the necklace, the emerald heirloom, unlocks the motive. Miss Hargrove gasped, her hands twisting her handkerchief. The necklace, a family treasure. Why take it? Holmes stopped pacing, his voice rising with conviction. Because it was personal, madam. The killer sought not wealth, but to wound the Hargrove legacy. Jenkins, you stabbed Sir Reginald in a moment of rage after he confronted you, not about your birth, but about Blackwell's blackmail, which you discovered. You, his son, felt doubly betrayed by your father's rejection and his failure to protect you from Blackwell's schemes. Jenkins's face crumpled, his voice a whisper. He called me a disgrace, said I'd never be his true heir. Blackwell's theft was bleeding him dry, and he blamed me for not seeing it. Holmes continued, relentless. You stabbed him with the letter opener, then staged the burglary, scattering papers, forcing the window, stopping the clock. The necklace you hid to suggest theft. The word betray was your flourish, written to echo your pain. But the dry mud, the clean blade, the planted button, they betrayed you. Jenkins sank to his knees, sobbing. I didn't mean to. I loved him, but he broke me. Miss Hargrove wept, her voice choked. Alfred, how could you? Holmes's expression softened, but his voice held firm. The truth, Miss Hargrove, is a bitter medicine. Jenkins acted alone, driven by years of suppressed anguish. The forged letter was his final act to shift blame to Thorne. I stepped forward, my heart heavy. Holmes, what of the moral in this tragedy? He turned to me, his eyes grave. Family secrets, Watson, fester like wounds untreated. Honesty, however painful, heals. Jenkins's silence bred betrayal, and Hargrove's denial sowed the seeds of his death. The room fell silent, save for the storm's fading rumble. Jenkins was led away by constables summoned by Holmes earlier, his confession sealing his fate. Blackwell, chastened, faced ruin for his theft. Thorne, cleared, departed with a curt nod. Miss Hargrove, shattered but resolute, thanked us, her grief now tempered by truth.